especially when the fighting was all around the buildings where they were staying, and getting them out and eventually getting to the border and getting up into Egypt. Yeah, but we are very relieved that they're here on terra firma, back in South Africa. Very happy, and the stress is over.
You were telling us that your son was right in the epicenter of the fighting, where the warring factions are fighting in Khartoum. He sent you all those gore videos. How was that experience?
Well, it was at first the guys thought it was just a local flare-up and it would be over in a couple of days and they'd go back to work. But after a week, it intensified, and at one stage the RSF were all around his building. They even came in there to charge their cell phones. And he said it was very hectic. The phone calls we had with him with the bullets going off sounded worse than Diwali, he said.
And obviously, I mean, the issue of the evacuation for them, I would imagine he was part of the group that had to be ferried in buses going to Egypt. Khartoum is a very difficult destination because it's far from other parts in terms of the neighbors of Sudan. So how was that encounter for him? How did he really just cope under such a tremendously and stressful situation?
Well, we didn't have a lot of communication from when he left his building and on the road up towards Egypt. A few days there was no communication whatsoever. They did spend 2 days up on the border itself, but it was a long bus ride, many hours in the buses. Many hours trying to get across the border. His passport was still in Khartoum at the Home Affairs in Khartoum, and then there were issues at the border. Got through eventually and got to Aswan. Great relief, but many hours of agony and waiting. But finally over.
Maybe it's just families. What do you guys say to the authorities, to the Egyptians, South African government, the gift of the givers, and many other people who are very instrumental in terms of making sure that this evacuation succeed? I would imagine there is a sense of gratitude.
Absolutely. If it wasn't for the people on the ground assisting the South Africans, the gift of the givers, DIRCO, it wouldn't have happened. They might still be sitting there.
All right, thank you so much indeed, sir, for your time. So obviously, I mean, Naledi, it's a very incredibly moving time for the families. It is indeed a very poignant moment, really just to give you a feel of what is currently happening now. So eventually the plane has finally landed all the way from Nairobi, albeit with a bit of delay because they were supposed to be here by 10:55. So they are currently embarking from KQ760. So a lot of families, you can see that there is a sense of jubilation as the families are really just coming to terms with this, and really a very exciting moment really for them, because also with the issue of the internet blackout, there has been a lot of inconsistencies in terms of the communications. So at this point in time, let's try and get more reactions. We'll keep it very short and sweet. Ma'am, you're here as well. How are you feeling about today?
I'm very blessed. I'm feeling very excited and happy to see my husband and my kids and our helper. So I'm thankful for our government, the South African government. I'm thankful for Jason Munyela. He's been communicating with us. We have been hopeful and faithful that the family will come back safe, and we are grateful that today it's happening and they're coming back home safely.
How did you guys interact with the one who was stuck in Sudan?
Okay, from Sunday last week when they were evacuated from Sudan to go to Egypt, the border of Egypt, the WhatsApp, obviously somewhere we were interrupted, but WhatsApp helped us. When they got there since Monday, I couldn't communicate with them until Wednesday when they check-in in the hotel in Aswan. But everything was through WhatsApp. The calls were not going through, obviously, from Egypt, but communication through WhatsApp was assisting us, and from the media side as well, everything was just perfect.
What the first thing you're going to do for him? I see you guys have got balloons, sheer jubilation at this point.
I wish I can do a white wedding for him. But I'm just going to hug him and be thankful that he was able to take care of the kids when I'm not there, and our helper. I'm just happy. I'm very happy. I'm blessed.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. So, Naledi, that's a feeling right here at the OR Tambo International Airport with the families really quite jubilated to reunite with their loved ones who are stuck in Sudan. Obviously a very sad situation for the Sudanese given the very conflict that they have encountered. This is a very important country for Africa for so many reasons, located by the Red Sea, a very busy maritime route, the shipping route, so many vessels really, so quite an important country. So we're expecting during the course of the day where Minister Pandor as well is going to officially welcome the South Africans who are back in the country. We know that yesterday about 10 of them just landed here at OR Tambo, and they came through from Terminal A here for the international arrivals. So there's a sigh of relief. There's a sheer jubilation here, as you can hear from the families. But in Sudan, it's a very precarious situation as quite a number of Sudanese are fleeing the country in light of the conflict that has engulfed the country, and quite a number of appeals and interventions as well that are being applied in terms of making sure that there is a long-lasting solution. So currently, Mxolisi, you ask yourself, where are they? The South Africans who just landed, they're still going through their immigration control, and eventually they will come out and then just get a chance to finally reunite with their families here.
Indeed, and all those emotions by the families, they are warranted, Kaeli. Maybe just also, just take us through as to what time the minister is expected to arrive there.
So we do understand at this particular point in time that the minister is around, but at any moment, as soon as they come out, the South Africans who have just been evacuated from Sudan, so that's when the official proceedings, I do believe very short proceedings really, to welcome them finally back home, especially because the department has been very instrumental in terms of making sure that this day finally comes where the South Africans are rescued from Sudan, especially because it's been a very risky situation, but also riddled with a lot of complexities because they had to deal with a number of regulations at the border from Egypt, from other parts as well, but also a very sad situation because Sudanese, we do understand, others now they are fleeing to the neighboring countries like Chad, Central African Republic, Libya, and unfortunately some of these countries are also just going through their own internal struggles, but also in Sudan itself. The fears of what happened in Darfur. We know that in the early 2000s we saw that so many killings, so many people died when the militias just mushroomed in Darfur. So great deal of concern about the volatility there in Sudan, but strong appeals as well from the neighboring countries. We do know that South Sudan President Salva Kiir Mayardit has been in touch with the two generals who are the main protagonists, de facto ruler of Sudan, General al-Burhan, and of course the leader of their rapid support forces as well, General Hemeti, trying to really just appeal to them to make sure that they do respect the ceasefire, but also making sure that the humanitarian access is given a green light. But where we are positioned at the OR Tambo International Airport by Terminal A arrivals in Polisiwek, any moment from now, the South Africans who are stuck in Sudan will be coming out here, and of course there's quite a very massive number of people who are keenly waiting. Other families are really shy really to talk to us because their position is they're waiting for their loved ones to come out, and then thereafter they can really just engage with us. But others have been really fortunate enough with their time to really interact with the media here at the airport.
Kaya, I need to piggyback on your conversation earlier with DIRCO spokesperson Clayson Monyela. Said that this was quite a complex effort to try and achieve. Speak to us about some of these complexities, and why it was so difficult to try and actually bring some of these people home.
It's a very unstable situation, Kolisi. As you know that, you look at other countries as well, the convoys, as they were leaving Khartoum and many other cities in Sudan, some convoys really came under siege, really. So it was a very fluid situation. But also apart from that, we do know that some South Africans really did not have their travel documents, understandably so, because it is a conflict. So when you get an opportunity to run away, that's when you just escape and you leave your possessions and really just prioritize your life. So that's the particular situation that they had to face. Especially, we understand, for example, by the Egyptian border, that's where the challenges were, where some South Africans were not able to cross initially. But we do understand that that particular hurdle has been overcome. So all South Africans have been safely evacuated. So those are the complexities, really. But for South African authorities as well, they talk about this broad strategy where they said it was all-encompassing, where they were not just focusing on the diplomatic staff. They really wanted to make sure that the citizens from South Africa, but also even some of the neighboring countries as well. We know that Mr. Monyela, in fact, the spokesperson of the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, attributed that to South Africa's foreign policy of Pan-Africanism. When there is a strife, where there is a standoff, if there are assets and if they do have the means to assist, then they really had to make sure that they also help other African nationals who are caught up in the crossfire in Sudan. But of course, it's a very sad situation what's happening in Khartoum, especially because, just to give you an idea, Mkolisi, we just also heard from the former Prime Minister of Sudan. We know that there was a military civilian administration at some point, albeit it was transitional and there was a coup, but the former Prime Minister was warning that the Sudanese conflict could be worse than what we saw in Libya and Syria, especially because this is a very volatile situation where you have so many militia groupings and a lot of them really are getting agitated, and there is this very sad situation as well where you do have the organizations like the World Health Organization warning about a very precarious environment where the hospitals and other healthcare facilities are on the verge of collapse and the foodstuff are running low. And Khartoum, for example, the capital city of Sudan, is a significantly massive town. 6 million people live there, and so there is a great deal of concern about the situation currently.
All right, Kylie Khumalo is watching that story for us. We'll be coming back to you, no doubt, a bit later on as it continues to develop. You're watching The Agenda. We continue with more news and live updates straight after this. Stay with us.
We serve more than just burgers.
Yes, thank you.
When we say together Mzansi, we mean
Guys, can I quickly tell you that the ministers are going to the holding room. These people will come in a group, escorted by the people from here, and then they will come and join you. So can we move to the media center?
Yeah, we want to get the shots of them coming through.
Yeah?
No, we need these shots. They're coming through, maybe they come in. And then we'll come through.
So just keep for families. The guy carrying a baby.
Just expect to see the family, whole family.
Just in terms of reaction. Well, I'm going to say it's a bit of a scrum here because obviously there's quite a significant number of people waiting for South Africans who have been evacuated from Sudan. But joining us now once again is the department spokesperson, a frequent visitor once again here in our set. So, Clayson, I mean, obviously this is a culmination once again of this very critical moment. I'm seeing the generals are here. I see everyone is waiting with bated breath. Take us through to what can we expect now.
So the plane has landed. Minister Pandor, Minister Motsoaledi, Minister Modise from Defense have had an occasion to meet with our nationals just as we're coming out of the plane. They are now being processed by Home Affairs through customs. They're going to get their luggage and then they will come out of those doors. We're quite happy that finally our people are home safely and government has been able to, working with other people and those that we collaborated with, bring our people home. The High Commissioner of Zimbabwe is here and was able to hug his Zimbabwean national who was part of our group. There's a Lesotho national as well. So the ambassador of Sudan, by the way, to South Africa is also here because it was very helpful when we needed certain problems or we encountered certain problems and he had to intervene. So this has been a successful operation, not easy, risky, but our people are finally home and you'll have an occasion to speak to them and ask them about how this experience was. They were very emotional, most are in tears, as you can imagine. Just being home is an emotional thing after what they went through.
And obviously a lot of complexities where you had to deal with your counterparts to help those without travel documents and really just making sure that the process is done as immaculately as possible to make sure that everyone is safely evacuated and in a very secure environment. And you went as far as paying for their flight ticket as well.
Yes, but this shouldn't give you ideas about getting to dangerous places hoping you will pay for your flight. No, on a serious note, the Minister of Home Affairs was making the point that we had to produce 19 emergency travel documents as part of this operation because our people had left their passports in Sudan because obviously they left in a hurry and there's a lot of stuff that they had to leave behind. And as you were correctly saying, this meant negotiating with Egypt to relax their immigration laws and allow those people, given the circumstances under which we left Sudan. So it has not been an easy operation, but the South African government always steps up. Each time we have to bring our people home. If you think of COVID-19 and the people we brought home from China, if you think of what happened with the Russia-Ukraine conflict, we brought people home safely. Again, we're doing it again. So South Africans have a very good government that always looks after them when they are in distress abroad, each time, successfully. Unlike other governments that only evacuated diplomats, we brought everyone home, no one left behind.
Any just lessons to the South Africans? I mean, obviously, we do know that you have a number of initiatives like Travel Smart to conscientize people about what to do, especially where you do have a diplomatic mission that second after Washington, D.C., but of course, those are outside as well. In terms of any just significant lesson you want to share with South Africans?
So this is a very good question because it allows me to share information with the public. We always encourage South Africans who travel abroad to do three things. One, let us know. We've got an app. Go onto the app store of your smartphone, and download DERCO Travel Smart app. It allows you to register and let us know where you're traveling. In case there is a situation where you are in distress and you require assistance, we're able to locate you and give you that assistance, which is not a favor. You are entitled to the consular assistance from government. The second thing we advise is get travel insurance. We've had unfortunate incidents where our people pass on in foreign countries, and the family is now burdened with bringing back their mortal remains for a burial. And in some cases, they don't have the funds or the means to do that. Travel insurance helps on such occasions. Or if you run out of money and you're on holiday, if you've got travel insurance, it's helpful. So inform us, get travel insurance, make sure you find out if there's an embassy in the country that you're visiting. These embassies are there to help you and provide services to you and information critically.
And just before I let you go, say once again the reiteration of Pretoria's stance in as far as this conflict is concerned. We know that you have been calling for a resolution. You have been calling for the humanitarian access for the civilians really to be assisted, especially given the very gravity of the situation on the ground, where the healthcare facilities are under siege and a litany of other concerns as well.
Look, the principle that South Africa firmly believes in is that political problems are best resolved through dialogue. We advocate for a peaceful resolution of conflicts. In the case of Sudan, we've called for a ceasefire. This will allow a passage for humanitarian aid for those who are injured to be attended to. Hospitals are damaged. The few that are still operational are overcrowded. So there's a dire need for people to be attended to. But the bigger message is to call for peaceful resolution of what's currently happening, for negotiations. And we are ready to support the efforts of IGAD, the regional body, to mediate for a negotiated settlement out of what's happening. So that remains the goal, in line with the African Union's call and goal and objective of silencing the guns on the African continent.
And I would imagine also because with South Africa being a member of the AU Peace and Security Council, it's quite important to have a stable continent so that we can see development, so that we can address instabilities that continue to be a major obstruction in Africa's journey for the achievement of the ideals, aspirations enshrined, for example, on Agenda 2063.
The Africa we want. This continent is potentially the richest in the world. There's nothing that you don't find in Africa. So the continent is rich, but the African is poor because of what is currently happening, including this conflict that we're talking about. And of course, there are external players who fuel some of these things. And they mustn't think that we're not aware. But as Africans, this remains our goal, to have an African continent that is peaceful, that is developmental, to the benefit of Africans. So we'll continue to push for that as South Africa.
And just before I let you go, say, I'm looking on my left-hand side. I see that there are generals, representatives from the Defense and Military Veterans Department.
The Commissioner of the Border Management Authority, the new commissioner, is here. I'm going to drag him by the head. Give me one second. Okay. Commissioner, Masia Park.
All right.
He is the newly appointed Commissioner of the Border Management Authority. He can tell you more about what government is doing to ensure that our borders are secure, but also in this operation specifically, the travel documents we had to work on to just help our people to come home.
All right. So once again, sir, thank you so much and welcome to SABC News. Maybe just briefly, just tell us about your role in this operation and how important was it for you to be involved, especially when it comes to travel documents?
Yeah, you see, as the Border Management Authority, what we have actually done is we worked with our colleagues from the Department of Home Affairs. But what we basically did is we sent a delegation over into Egypt in particular, so that when the people arrive that side, especially those that might have lost their passports, they actually had to be assisted. So in that instances, we made sure that we give them emergency travel certificate for them to be able to come over. So out of all of the number that is actually arrived today, which is 53, we have 19 of those that we have given the emergency travel documents, as it were. Yeah.
And how was that experience? Because obviously you had to negotiate with your counterparts from Egypt and many other countries. How was that experience in terms of making sure that they understand? Or thanks to very cordial relationship that you enjoy with these countries and finally you were able to have a breakthrough.
Yeah, so indeed, we really have a very, I would say, cordial diplomatic relation, even with Sudan itself, and by the way, even with Egypt. So on that basis, we worked together with them, and were then able to be assisted where we wanted their intervention in this particular process. So on that basis, we're able to work with them and make sure that we are able to facilitate our nationals to be able to come back home safely, as it were.
All right, so thank you so much indeed for your time. So, of course, Mxolisi, that's the commissioner for BMA, that's a border management agency. So you can see that where we are positioned, it is a vantage point as we wait for the official arrival of South African nationals. Here they are, and the shots won't be as steady as you want them to be, but so finally they are here. So it's a moment of culmination, if you like. So obviously very happy family members. So here we go. They are being ushered now to the media center. So there you go. I'm just going to let the scenes really just speak for themselves here, Mxolisi, because, you know, there is a great deal of jubilation here. The families, the hugs, and all kinds of reactions. You can see that it's a sigh of relief, really, for the families at this particular point in time. So tell me, how are you feeling right now?
Excited. I'll talk later.
Okay. All right. Let's try. What about you, sir? What do you make of today?
Okay.
All right. What do you make of today, sir?
I'm very happy. I'm just waiting for the rest of my parents. Yeah, we're going to go just now. Thank you.
All right, Mxolisi, obviously where we are positioned, it is still Terminal A arrival, so we are trying to get as many reactions as possible from the families, from the people stationed here. So it is a very important day for these families to reunite with their loved ones. So as you can see, that the police are really having a bit of a struggle here to make sure that we make our way to the media room. So that's where the interviews will take place. But albeit we try to get reactions as much as possible. Let's see if we can try to get a chance to talk to them while they are making their way to the media center. Obviously, it is a bit of a dicey situation. You know, I'm just gazing across here. I'm seeing one of the family members actually shedding a tear or two. Ma'am, how are you feeling right now? How are you feeling right now? There you have it. Obviously, she's quite moved, profoundly moved by what has happened. So for them, it is a sigh of relief, especially because they've been really struggling to speak to their families, especially because in Sudan there has been the internet blackout. So the police are really trying to work as much as possible to make sure that it's a very seamless process where we are stationed. So we are making our way. Ma'am, how are you feeling at this point?
I'm very happy that my parents, they had to come back safely. I'm very relieved. I'm very relieved that they are back.
Very emotional scenes where we are positioned. Obviously, we are heading to the media room. It's a bit of a scramble where we are, policy, because obviously there are all kinds of instructions for everyone to comply. So we are heading to the media room. That's where the media briefing will take place. We do understand there are representatives from the South African government as well, but people here are very emotional at this point in time. There's relief as well. So this is where it's going to culminate. And as you can see, this is where the South African representatives are stationed. So I think we're going to throw it back to studio, and during the course of the day we'll keep you posted.
Just pick the spot I'm getting. Because on the left, Modise Defense, I'm going to hand over to my boss, the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Dr. Naledi Pandor, to speak, and then we'll take it from there. Minister?
Thank you. Thank you very much, DDG. Good afternoon, everyone. We thought that it's important that the people of South Africa see that all the nationals of South Africa that had indicated they wish to return home are back home. So we just want South Africa to be assured, because all of us have been waiting for you to come back. And we're absolutely happy that you have been able to safely return home. We also welcome our friends from Zimbabwe and the one returnee from Lesotho, who is part of our South African delegation. I'm greeting you on behalf of the President, the government, and the people of South Africa. And all we wish to say is that we are really happy that you are back home. We feel for the people of Sudan who are experiencing a terrible conflict, and we pray that that conflict will end, but we are happy that you are back home. There are 51 of you who have come back, who are here today, and we had more who arrived yesterday on a commercial airline. I'm really grateful, and I'm sure you would agree with me that we must thank our members in the South African National Defence Force. We must thank our state security agency. We must thank our diplomatic staff and officials in the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. And of course, we must thank our ambassador to Sudan, the South African ambassador to Sudan. Ma'am, we really, really thank you for all the effort that you and your staff made to ensure that we were able to get our people back home. So really, it's just to say welcome to all of you. I know it's very traumatic. I know the children want to get home. I know you wish to be with your families, but we could not let this moment pass. And I must say that it has been a partnership with the departments I have referred to, also a partnership that included support from the Gift of the Givers, a very wonderful non-governmental organization that is making an immense contribution to humanitarian relief all over the world, wherever South Africans need assistance. So this effort between government and Gift of the Givers has been a really wonderful effort. I can also not neglect to thank the Ambassador of Sudan to South Africa, Excellency. Thank you. Whenever we needed help, whenever we needed a phone number in Sudan, the Ambassador was ready to provide us with that phone number. So, Excellency, I sincerely thank you. Shukran, for all the help that you have given to us. Also, our colleague, the High Commissioner of Zimbabwe to South Africa, for being here today and working with us as we sought to get all our people back home. I'm so glad to see all of you. I know you wish to be with your families. You've had enough of politicians, I'm sure. I just want to say to you that we as government hope that we can play some role in bringing peace back to Sudan, because I don't think we should desert the people of Sudan. It is South Africa's policy that we must try wherever we can on our continent to silence their guns. We are unhappy when we see people suffering, fellow Africans, experiencing what the people of Sudan are going through today. And so we will try to make every effort to really engage with the current conflict parties in Sudan to persuade them to lay down arms, to persuade them to work for peace. And wherever we as South Africa can give some small assistance, as the government and people of South Africa, I know we are ready to do so. And I'm sure you will agree that South Africa must always play a role of supporting other Africans so that we achieve peace and stability on the continent, because that is the only way in which we will advance positive development in Africa. So I'm glad you are back, but I want to conclude by saying, let us not forget the people of Sudan. They are suffering, they're experiencing something terrible. And I will be asking in the next week or so that we put our heads together and we look at how we can help those displaced people who've crossed into Chad. Chad doesn't have the resources to help all those who've now become refugees from Sudan. And if there's some small way we can help South Africa, I believe we should do so. And we will indicate how we will give help in the next week or so. So really, this is just to say welcome home and to say stay safe while you are home. I don't want to hear about you doing anything that gets you into any difficult situation. Stay safe, be at home, be with your family, and if there's any way in which you wish to communicate with us, I know you know where to get hold of us now. So thank you for coming back home safe, and please go and be with your family, have a rest, and enjoy being back in Mzansi, your Mzansi. Thank you very much.
I just want to check if there is a burning question from the media that you want to ask. Otherwise, we want to allow the families to go. Let's take that question. Kaya, I see you are. And yes, okay, let's do those.
Good afternoon.
Please go ahead. Introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. It's Sponsor Muzipa from Kaya News. I just wanted to find out, will the victims be provided with psychological support?
All right. Kaya?
Hi, today it's Kylie Shakumala here from SABC News. Maybe just, Minister, once again, just take us through to the process. How is it like, obviously, evacuation with a number of obstacles that you have to overcome for South Africans to get out of Sudan? And maybe just your point about making sure that there is long-lasting peace in Sudan. We saw that the South Sudanese president has been engaged with the two generals. Does South Africa support those efforts, especially as an AU and Peace and Security Council member? Thank you.
Hi, Minister Dennis Delbos from Evacuation from Beale. I just want to confirm with you the number of people that arrived in South Africa on this flight. And then also, I just want to know from you, you've just taken a stand on the war in Sudan. Why not on the war in Ukraine? Thank you.
We have. Is there anyone else? That you will be the last.
Afternoon, Minister. I just wanted to get an update from...
Intro?
Oh, sorry, Linda Damasivana from ESPA. I would like to get a sense from the Home Affairs Minister. In our conversation earlier, Mr. Monyela, you mentioned how you have to get emergency documentation for a number of the South Africans. Perhaps take us through that process. And then from to the Minister of Defense as well. Just the logistics around the military getting involved. How was that process? How did that process unfold?
Yeah, thank you. Those will be the only questions we're taking. Thank you, guys. Minister?
All right. Okay, thank you for the questions. I did forget when I thanked all the departments. I didn't thank Minister Motsoaledi's department, Home Affairs. Minister, thank you as well. I wouldn't call our citizens victims. They are survivors. That's how I regard them. But I do think that we have counseling services in our country, and I would say for those particularly who are in very conflict-ridden areas, I would advise that they do make use of counseling services. We have both in public institutions as well as in the private sector excellent support that all our citizens can access. So I really would encourage that, because it's horribly traumatic to be caught up in such a terrible situation of armed conflict, and we shouldn't undermine the impact that this can have. With respect to what did it take, a lot of organizing. We had a joint committee that worked on evacuation, which was made up of various departments, the departments I've referred to. I also believe state security played an extremely important role as part of that joint evacuation committee. So it took lots of meetings. Fortunately, the fact that Sudan continued to have internet and some communication availability, that made it possible for us to have constant communication. But I must say our ambassador and her team went well beyond the call of duty in the work that they did. And for me, Team South Africa showed its mettle. And what we have is an evacuation where the government and Gift of the Givers have played a very important central role. With others, you would recall with other countries, the government has really been involved in evacuating diplomats and their families rather than the ordinary citizenry. But with us, it was our people that we were able to bring back home. On South Sudan, President Salva Kiir continues to be seized with the matter, along with the President of Djibouti and the President of Kenya. They have been assigned by IGAD, the regional body, to be the lead in interfacing with the two conflicting parties and attempting to draw them together. From the most recent statements I saw this week, where the Foreign Minister of South Sudan briefed all ambassadors, the process is still not moving the way we would like to see it move, but we continue to see some observing of the ceasefire. However, gunshots continue to be heard. So there's a great deal of work to be done, but the three presidents are giving this matter their closest attention, as is the African Union. On the number that has arrived, I understand it's 53. As I said, 51 are South Africans. One is from Zimbabwe, is a citizen of Zimbabwe, and one other is a citizen of Lesotho. You would have seen earlier this week arrival of Zimbabwean citizens in Harare, so they managed to get alternative transport. We also had 10 South Africans arriving earlier this week, because you know there were two routes for evacuation. One was via the port of Sudan and into Jeddah in Saudi Arabia, and then the other was the Egyptian route that we followed.
So it was 53 this morning.
So this morning it's 53. And then you said, I take a position on the conflict in Sudan, but not on Ukraine. Let me explain to you, because I think media doesn't always listen to us. I have said, as a country, when South Africa became free, we undertook, through our constitution, we will always strive for peace. We don't want war because we know what conflict does to a nation. And so I have appealed both to Ukraine, to Russia, and to the international community. Let us use the best diplomatic efforts to bring the two parties together and to have a settlement, because war and conflict are destructive, people die every day, and we want to end this conflict. That is the position of South Africa. So I think it's absolutely wrong to say we don't have a position. We do. We want peace for the people of Ukraine. With respect to Home Affairs and Defense, the two ministers will speak. Minister Motsoaledi.
I don't know whether I should stand also.
Yes, I think it's better.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Minister Pandor. Look, it is illegal to cross any borders without requisite documentation, especially passport. So whenever people are stranded, it might be you in the center of London, having been marked or lost luggage, etc., you still have to come back home. So it's the duty of Home Affairs through our missions to offer you emergency travel documents. We always do that. I've told people that there is nothing called an emergency passport, because they always phone us and say, I must get into Botswana this afternoon, can you give me an emergency passport? There's nothing like that. What they are talking about is an emergency travel document. It's not available to you to leave South Africa, but it's available to you to come back home. And that's what we've issued. Even Thabo Bester, he was fetched by us in Tanzania, but we gave him an emergency travel document because he left illegally. We didn't want him to come back illegally also. So even if this was an evacuation, we had to give them emergency travel documents. Thank you very much.
19. Only 19 people needed them.
Oh, yes. Okay.
The question was the process involved. Members of the National Defence Force swear to protect life, limb and property of South Africa. Wherever South Africans have been and in distress, the South African National Defence Force has not disappointed. This is not the first time we are involved. You'll remember when your children, South Africans, were stuck in China during COVID. It was young military staff of South Africa that went there and fetched them. So this is not the first time, this won't be the last time. Should I outline the process here in this particular instance? I think not. I think that we should be grateful that our citizens, our neighbors are back home, that we have not lost unnecessary lives, that we were all listening to the call, that we all cooperated, and that these lovely babies who are here with us are here, that we have not lost South Africans yet. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ministers. Thank you all. That concludes this briefing, and once again, welcome home.
Thank you, Minister Modise and Minister Motsoaledi. I'm really grateful that you were here.
Thanks for inviting us.
The referee. You are the